Drupal Salesforce, where the organization is struggling to learn Salesforce. Some people don't want to do it. The developer who was hired to do it is struggling to just make the site work without errors. And you can get kind of trapped in that. And so we're always concerned about, like, any code that you don't write is code that you don't have to maintain, that you don't have to hire a consultant to review. So if you can just avoid that entirely, that reduces your overall costs, you know, in the long term. Keeping things simple is good, even if sometimes it means maybe slightly more work from an administrative point of view. Sometimes that's still the right decision to make because it allows you to make changes without touching the technology. Something to consider.
And a lot of times, I think, especially with like a website redesign, people have an idea that they want to do like, 100 features on this new site. And they have an idea of what it should be and how people should interact with it, and then it gets built and no one actually interacts with it in that way. So it's another good argument to do like iterative, agile development, starting very simple and then building off of that based on what people are actually using it for.
Yeah. We always consider, who do you have internally that can actually work on it? Are you completely reliant on outside consultants? Do you have a technical person inside who has the time in their schedule to learn some new systems? And are they going to be able to liaise between, the developer who's working on it? Do you have a consultant? We at Design Hammer are really fortunate because we partner with Cloud for Good, and they serve a really important need in working directly with the client. They have a lot of expertise in the Salesforce side of things, where we have less experience in that. We have a lot more experience with integrating data and how Drupal works, and so having those resources to your organization so that when you have questions, like, you may not know how your organization should be using Salesforce, so having that be part of the process at the beginning will save you time and money later because you're not having to make changes. You're having something that fits your workflow and you've prepared for training. You know what forms you need. If the client asked us, do we need web to lead? That's a question that they would probably be better answering for themselves, and then we tell them how to build it.
That's why I was interested in your process for moving to Salesforce, because I think a lot of people, they haven't really thought through, like, what are the particulars of how we're actually going to use this thing. It's just like, okay, we're going to start using Salesforce now. And it's an incredibly complex system, so you can't just jump into it and expect everything to work well.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, I came a few minutes late. You might have covered this at the top. So these are proprietary things you built on top, right?
So Drupal itself is open source,
exactly.
And the Salesforce suite is open source under the same license.
Right.
So not proprietary.
Right.
The Salesforce platform is a proprietary for-profit company, but any person can download and access and change the Salesforce suite code.
Right, but these tools to synchronize between the two
are part of the Salesforce suite. So they're open source.
Okay, so this is open source too. Okay,
yeah.
So you guys built it.
There's several people who have contributed to that.
Okay,
yeah,
but it's available in that.
It's available.
Okay.
You can download it and set it up. Now, to do a lot of the more complex things that we're talking about, you probably will need to write some custom code. So the overall tendency, though, has been less custom code is needed.
Right.
You're able to do more from just configuring this module.
Right. Okay, so one other question. So given the relative ubiquity of Drupal, right? How did it happen that you guys were the first people to get to this?
A client came to us. We had been doing some Drupal, and they came to us and said, we want to do this thing with Salesforce and sell it. And we had a lot of experience previously with just general integration, website, other thing, make them work together. So it seemed natural to us. We hadn't worked with Salesforce before, and said, yeah, we can do that. And it was a little bit of pain kind of learning, and Kosta and I learned that together as our first project. And it turns out that Drupal plus Salesforce generates an awful lot of business, like a lot. And so that became we kind of pivoted company-wise and started doing more of it.
But over what kind of time frame?
3 years.
3 years.
Oh, okay.
We're not the first people to do
No.
Yeah, okay. Thanks. And
we got into working on the Salesforce module because we needed to. We needed to get that site done, so the module had to work.
Right. I've seen. Are you guys familiar with Soapbox Engage or Soapbox?
A little bit.
On the Joomla side, it's like a drop-in toolkit. It's a subscription model to do that Joomla website, Salesforce backend, seamless integration. So are you guys basically modeling that same kind of?
They probably fit in the same thing. We haven't referenced. You were asking about Joomla before. Have you worked with it? Are you happy with it?
No, I haven't. We're like right on the cusp of deciding how to
Yeah.
do these two things together.
Sure. One of the things that we brought up before is a lot of the choice there is what do you have internally? Do you have staff that are comfortable in Joomla versus Drupal? And that might be enough to make it a good decision. Like we talk about Drupal and Salesforce a lot because that's what we know, but I wouldn't say that we push it at all because it's really different for every organization.
Does Joomla allow that, last question, does Joomla allow that same site-based login ID kind of stuff?
I'm not certain, but just as a programmer, I would guess
Yeah.
probably.
You have a question?
I think there was a point made that I'm not sure if I caught right. So the Drupal integrating with Salesforce piece, I assumed was an app that you add to Salesforce that integrates with Drupal.
Like
So
in
the way it
the app
works,
section.
And you wrote that app, or are there several apps like that like
So
Designhammer wrote one of them and there's
It's a
multiple
Drupal
ones?
module, so it's PHP code, and it runs on the Drupal site. And then on the Salesforce side, you have to create it's called an app. And basically all it is authorizing the Drupal site to interact with Salesforce. But it's not like something on the App Exchange, just saying, okay, we grant access through OpenAuth to Drupal. But it's not anything on App
So it's
Exchange.
not app, so it's just a configuration, like what a couple of checkboxes have?
Yeah, when you want to, so you say I want to connect my Drupal site to my Salesforce instance, you start by going to Salesforce, and there's a section, and they've changed this recently, it used to not be this way. It used to be you would just download the WSDL file and go that way. This is, you create an entry in your Salesforce instance saying, we have an app that wants to connect to Salesforce. Here's the record here's where it's connecting from. It's basically similar to the OAuth process of saying, here's a third party that's going to interact with Salesforce on our behalf. Once you get that information, you get like an endpoint, and I think there's some keys that you get.
Yeah, you get some keys to set it up. You also specify like if it should only have access to contacts but not anything else, you can specify that. It only runs over SSL, so it's more secure than previous implementations as well.
So you then install the Salesforce Suite module on Drupal. There's a config page where you can put those keys in, and if everything worked, which it should, it'll say connected, and from there you can go, you saw the mapping screen, you can then create some new field map and say contacts and users. You could have opportunities syncing up with a content type you create, so now you've got content on your site that is just automatically synced from content in Salesforce. That's actually, I mean, we didn't show that, but that's actually really easy to do and pretty powerful if you've got someone who's managing change lives, testimonials from people that you're keeping track of in Salesforce. It is pretty straightforward to just have that become content on your site that you don't have to do anything else to manage and update. You fix a typo in Salesforce, it's fixed on the website. That kind of stuff's actually pretty cool if you kind of plan it out and have it fit in the right spot. Things we recommend when